37% of American adults cannot cover a $400 emergency expense using cash or its equivalent. That is the finding of the Federal Reserve's 2024 Survey of Household Economics and Decision-Making, the most comprehensive annual snapshot of American financial resilience available. The average car repair in 2025 costs $838, according to Kelley Blue Book. The average emergency room visit runs well over $1,000 before insurance. Most Christian households are one unexpected bill away from debt. Scripture built a provision mechanism for exactly this problem, and the most detailed model for it in the Bible was applied to an entire nation for 7 years. By the end of this video, you will understand the biblical architecture of an emergency fund, what the current data says about where to keep it, and the framework for building it starting from wherever you are today. The Federal Reserve's 2024 SHED report, published May 2025, gives us the clearest picture of American emergency preparedness. 37% of adults would not cover a $400 emergency using cash or its equivalent. 13% could not pay it by any means. 45% of adults have not set aside enough for 3 months of expenses. 30% could not cover 3 months by any means, representing roughly 75 million American adults with no financial cushion between their household and a crisis. 1 Timothy 5:8, an epistle, apostolic instruction with direct application weight. If anyone does not provide for his household, he has denied the faith. Provision is not limited to income. It includes the structures that protect income from being consumed by the unexpected. An emergency fund is not a savings strategy. It is a faith posture toward household protection. The most comprehensive emergency fund model in Scripture was applied not to a household, but to an entire nation. Genesis 41. Pharaoh has 2 dreams no one can interpret. Joseph is brought before him. The dreams mean 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. His counsel in Genesis 41:34, let overseers collect 1/5 of Egypt's grain during the 7 years of abundance. 1/5, 20%, stored systematically during years of provision for years of crisis not yet arrived. The Hebrew text specifies the mechanism: collected, stored, held in reserve, distributed when the crisis came. Not consumed during abundance, protected for necessity. Joseph didn't invent this principle. He applied it at scale. Proverbs had already named it. Proverbs 21:20, wisdom literature, a Solomonic observation. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. Storage during abundance. That's the framework. Proverbs 27:12, wisdom literature. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. The emergency fund is the act of seeing the danger before it arrives and creating the refuge in advance. Luke 14:28-30, narrative teaching, Jesus using a construction analogy. Which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? An unexpected medical bill is the uncounted cost of every financial plan that lacks a reserve. Joseph's model had 3 structural features that made it work. Built during abundance, not assembled during crisis. The grain was collected before the famine arrived. Most American households attempt to build emergency savings after an emergency has depleted them. The biblical model is reversed. Build the reserve before you need it. Held separately, not available for daily consumption.
Proverbs 21:20 distinguishes between what is stored and what is gulped down. A reserve living in the same account as spending money is not a reserve. It is a future spending target. Genesis 41:36 states the purpose, that the food shall be a reserve against the 7 years of famine, a defined purpose, a specific function, not savings in the abstract, provision held in reserve for a named category of crisis. These 3 features are not ancient cultural artifacts. They are the same 3 features that make a modern emergency fund effective. built during abundance, held separately, defined target. Here is the framework stated plainly. The emergency fund is not a financial product. It is a biblical function. Joseph called it a reserve. Proverbs 21:20 calls it stored provision. Modern finance calls it an emergency fund. The function is identical. Resources set aside during stability, held separately from daily consumption with a defined purpose of covering the unforeseen. The modern vehicle for this function is a high-yield savings account, FDIC insured, separate from checking, liquid but not immediately visible in daily spending. The national average savings rate is 0.38% per FDIC data as of April 2026. The best available HYSA rates as of May 2026 reach up to 5% APY per Fortune's current reporting. Your reserve should be earning while it waits. An emergency fund held in a standard bank savings account at 0.38% is not working, it is sitting. The same reserve in an HYSA earning 4 to 5% generates $400 to $500 per year in interest on a $10,000 balance while it waits. The biblical store has a modern vehicle. Use it. Here is the three-part framework drawn from the Genesis 41 model. Part 1. Set the target. The emergency fund is a defined reserve for a defined purpose, not a permanent savings accumulation. Target 1, $1,000 immediately. Bipartisan Policy Center analysis of Federal Reserve data confirms that having at least $1,000 in emergency savings cuts in half the likelihood of raiding a retirement account during a crisis. $1,000 is the intervention point. Target 2, 3 months of essential expenses, not total lifestyle, essential expenses only, housing, utilities, food, transportation, insurance. The Federal Reserve Shed 2024 identifies this as the standard measure of financial resiliency. In 2024, 55% of adults had reached it. Join that group. Target 3 for variable income households, 6 months. Self-employed, commission-based, and single-income households need 6 months minimum. Volatility exposure is higher, and recovery time from income disruption is longer.
Part 2. Hold it separately. Open a dedicated HYSA at an online bank, separate institution preferred, or at minimum a separate account not visible on the primary banking dashboard. This is the Proverbs 21:20 distinction, what is stored versus what is consumed. Out of sight, out of temptation. FDIC insurance covers up to $250,000 per depositor per institution. Rates as of May 2026 reach up to 5.00% APY at leading online banks per Fortune's current reporting. Rates are variable and subject to change. Confirm current APY before opening. Part 3. Automate the build. Set an automatic transfer from checking to the HYSA on payday, not when the month's spending has settled, on payday. The Joseph model collected grain before it reached Egyptian households. Before abundance was consumed, 1/5 was redirected into reserve. That sequencing is the mechanism. Proverbs 21:5, wisdom literature. The plans of the diligent lead to profit. The diligent plan removes the decision from discretionary judgment and puts it on autopilot. The emergency fund is not a goal you work toward when the budget has room. It is a non-negotiable allocation that runs before spending does. In the 10-10-80 system from EP2, the second 10% is where the emergency fund builds first, before investing begins. Emergency fund to $1,000, then 3 months, then invest. In that order. Open a high-yield savings account today and name it the reserve account. Not this week, today. Online banks, including Wealthfront, Marcus by Goldman Sachs, and Ally Bank, consistently offer rates significantly above the national average. FDIC insured, no monthly fees at most institutions. Rates as of May 2026 range from 4% to 5% APY per Fortune's current reporting. Rates are variable and subject to change. Confirm current APY before opening. Set up an automatic transfer of whatever you can start with on your next payday. 37% of American adults face the next unexpected expense without options. The reserve Joseph built protected a nation. The reserve you build today removes your household from that 37%. Open the account today. Now that you understand the biblical architecture of an emergency fund and the modern vehicle for it, the next question is where the monthly allocation to build it comes from. Because the reserve requires margin, and most households do not have margin until a system creates it. That system is the next video. The biblical budget framework that creates margin from exactly what you currently earn, applied directly to your monthly paycheck. It is queued up right now.